Before I tell you every single, satisfying, and meticulously executed detail of how I turned my boyfriend's casual condescension into the fuel for my ultimate, joyful liberation, I want to invite you into this space. If you've ever had someone you love or who claims to love you, subtly try to dim your light, to tell you your energy is too much, or that your passion needs management, then hit that subscribe button. This channel is a sanctuary for the unconstrained, a gathering place for women who are reclaiming their boundless joy, asserting their unyielding spirit, and proving that true relevance is found in living your absolute truth, regardless of external judgment. You won't want to miss seeing how this unfolds. Part 1. The New Horizon and the Undeniable Spark. My life in Chicago was a testament to defiant joy, a masterpiece forged from decades of relentless self-reinvention. Harper Creative, my strategic design firm, continued to flourish, recognized globally for its innovative work and human-centered approach. My townhouse in Ukrainian village was a tranquil haven, its garden bursting with life, mirroring the boundless energy I cultivated within. My daily rhythm was a symphony of purpose, leading my team, mentoring young designers, sailing on Lake Michigan, and tending to my vibrant garden. My relationships with Mark, Emily, and Clara, my grandchildren, deepened with mutual respect, free from any lingering shadows of expectation. The clarifying fires of menopause had long since settled into a profound, inner peace, leaving my mind sharper, my spirit more resilient than ever. Having rebuilt every facet of my life, embracing radical freedom as my core philosophy, I found myself, unexpectedly, open to a new kind of connection. After years of unwavering self-focus, of proving I could thrive completely on my own, a quiet space had opened in my heart for companionship. That's when Daniel Hayes entered my world. Daniel was a recent transplant to Chicago, a brilliant, charming man in his early 70s, recently retired from a highly successful career as a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. He lived in a sleek, minimalist penthouse in the Gold Coast, commanding stunning views of the city skyline. He was elegant, impeccably dressed, effortlessly witty, and initially, incredibly attentive. He pursued me with a gentle persistence, sending me thoughtful notes, flowers, invitations to concerts at the Symphony Center, and exhibits at the Art Institute. He was intelligent, well-traveled, and seemingly fascinated by my unique life journey. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, often stretching for hours over quiet dinners at intimate Chicago restaurants, or during long walks along the lakefront as the setting sun painted the sky in hues of impossible beauty. He listened intently as I spoke of Harper Creative's latest projects, my global adventures, my design philosophy. He seemed genuinely impressed by my energy, my drive, my unconventional spirit. He understood the complexities of the business world, and our discussions often delved into sophisticated financial strategies, global markets, and the intricate dance of innovation. He spoke of his own vast investment portfolio with an understated confidence, often offering astute observations on market trends or strategic acquisitions that piqued my own intellectual curiosity. He possessed a wealth of knowledge I respected. For the first time in decades, since David, I allowed myself to explore the possibility of a shared future, a genuine partnership with someone who saw me, truly saw me, for the extraordinary woman I had become. It was different from my marriage with David. There was no pretense of shared ambition. This was about two fully realized individuals finding joy in each other's company. I believed he saw my vitality not as an anomaly, but as an inspiration. It was during this period of blossoming companionship that I reignited a profound artistic passion. My mind, always seeking new challenges, had become captivated by the emerging field of interactive digital art. I envisioned creating a large-scale, immersive digital installation for Chicago's annual Arts in the Park Festival, blending my traditional design sensibilities with cutting-edge technology. It was an ambitious, intensely personal project that truly pushed the boundaries of my creativity and technical skill. It was called Echoes of the City, a multi-sensory experience that would translate Chicago's unique urban rhythms into a flowing, interactive light, and soundscape. I poured my heart and soul into Echoes of the City. I spent countless hours in my West Loop studio, immersed in coding, designing complex visual algorithms, experimenting with motion sensors and soundscapes. My initial delight in the project soon blossomed into a relentless, all-consuming passion. My typical long workdays extended into late nights. Weekends were often spent deep in creative flow, fueled by copious amounts of strong coffee and an almost boundless internal energy. This project was not just work. It was a profound spiritual undertaking, a visible manifestation of the limitless creativity I had reclaimed in my second act. My physical health was robust, my stamina unwavering. My previous journeys, my motorcycle trips, and sailing expeditions had forged a physical and mental resilience that allowed me to sustain this intense creative output. I was deeply, utterly, vibrantly alive. I was creating. I was living. I was utterly fulfilled. And Daniel, who initially found my energy charming, began to shift. The first subtle hints of discomfort, a quiet unease with my unwavering intensity, began to surface. My boundless focus, my passion that consumed me, began to make him uncomfortable. He preferred predictable pleasures, leisurely dinners, quiet concerts, sedate walks. He wanted a partner who was present always. But my current life, my consuming passion, required that I was often present somewhere deep in the digital landscape of Echoes of the City. His admiration, I realized, was beginning to curdle into subtle concern. And that concern, I knew, was a subtle prelude to judgment. Part 2. The subtle correction and the cold jolt. The shift in Daniel's demeanor was almost imperceptible at first, like a barely discernible change in the wind off Lake Michigan. His initial admiration for my boundless energy and relentless creative drive subtly transmuted into something that felt like unease. He wanted a partner for quiet contemplation, for shared, predictable pleasures. My consuming passion for Echoes of the City, however, often meant long nights in my studio, missed social events, and a singular focus that made me, at times, happily, creatively absent from his immediate orbit. He would call my studio, his voice tinged with a mild exasperation. "Linda, are you still there? It's almost 10 p.m., don't you ever stop?" His advice began gently. "Darling," he'd say, a soft, indulgent smile on his face, "you're working too hard. Don't you think it's time to slow down a little? You've already built a wonderful business. This art project, it's very charming, but it's not going anywhere, is it? You should really prioritize balance now. You're 50 plus, you know." The subtle insinuation, my intense creativity was an imbalance, a problem to be fixed, an age-inappropriate exertion. My vitality was becoming a source of polite concern. He'd then gently try to steer me towards his preferred activities. Leisurely weekend getaways to quiet bed and breakfasts, sedate museum visits, early evening concerts. I would participate, of course, loving his company, but my mind would often drift back to the intricate code of Echoes of the City, to a particular soundscape I was developing or a visual algorithm I was trying to perfect. My restlessness, my simmering creative urgency, often clashed with his desire for serene, predictable companionship. He wanted to enjoy our time together. I wanted to create. And the two, for him, were increasingly at odds. His subtle corrections escalated. He started offering unsolicited guidance on how to manage my time, how to unplug from my work. He'd find articles on burnout in creative professionals and casually leave them on my coffee table. He'd suggest that my relentless pursuit of perfection in my art project might be a form of avoiding rest. His concern, though framed with gentle affection, felt deeply condescending. He saw my passion not as a wellspring of joy, but as a symptom of a pathology he needed to help me control. One evening, we were having dinner at a high-end Italian restaurant in West Loop, not far from my studio. The ambience was soft, romantic, filled with the gentle murmur of contented diners. I, however, was buzzing with a new breakthrough. I had finally cracked a complex coding problem for Echoes of the City, a particularly intricate algorithm for real-time audience interaction. I felt exhilarated. My mind was alight with possibility. "Daniel," I said, leaning forward, my voice bright with excitement. "I finally solved it. The haptic feedback loop for the visual response. It's going to make the entire experience so much more immersive. I worked it out in the studio just before I came here. It was a real breakthrough." Daniel, who had been listening to me with a patient, indulgent smile, slowly set down his fork. He reached across the table and gently, almost imperceptibly, squeezed my hand. His smile was soft, paternal. "Linda, darling," he began, his voice a quiet, sympathetic murmur, filled with a concern that cut me to the core. "I admire your dedication. Truly. But honestly, sometimes your passion is just a little too intense." The words landed on the elegant tablecloth, shattering the romantic ambience. Too intense. They hung in the air, cold and stark, slicing through my excitement like a surgeon's scalpel. Not too much work. Not too many hours. My passion. The very essence of my renewed spirit, the vibrant force that propelled my second act, was deemed too intense. It was a judgment, a verdict on my very being. His expression was one of gentle, concerned benevolence. He thought he was offering me valuable advice, a kind and necessary correction to a perceived excess in my emotional landscape. He thought he was helping me. But in that moment, all the unspoken assumptions of his subtle judgments crystallized. He didn't want a partner whose joy was boundless, whose creativity was consuming, whose energy was limitless. He wanted a partner who was predictable, manageable, who understood her own boundaries, as defined by his comfort. He wanted me to dim my light. He wanted me to shrink myself to fit into his tranquil, orderly world. A cold, internal jolt shot through me. It wasn't the searing heat of a hot flash. It was the precise, terrifying clarity of a soul recognizing an immediate threat to its freedom. The too intense judgment echoed David's old condescensions, too emotional, too much, too aggressive. It was the same song, just with a gentler, more sophisticated melody. He saw my intensity not as vitality, but as an inconvenience. He wanted me to act my age. He wanted me to conform to his idea of a serene septuagenarian. My hands, hidden beneath the table, clenched into fists. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, saw the subtle desire for control lurking beneath his charm. He wanted to manage my internal thermostat, to regulate my joy, to define the very intensity of my spirit. He was defining my authenticity as an imperfection. And for a woman who had fought so hard for every inch of her liberation, that was utterly, profoundly unforgivable. He had no idea what he had just uncorked. He thought he was simply giving advice. He was about to find out he had just provided the blueprint for his total removal from my perfectly unbound life. And that blueprint would be drawn with his own financial wisdom. Part 3. The Calculus of Calculated Detachment. I returned home from dinner that night, my mind a maelstrom of furious clarity. The gentle hum of my Chicago townhouse felt suffocating. Daniel's voice, calm and compassionate, resonated in my ears. Too intense. My spirit, once so open to this new companionship, now bristled with a raw, almost visceral pain. I had mistaken his admiration for my spirit as genuine acceptance. It was, I realized, only acceptance so long as it remained within the bounds of his comfort. My boundless joy, my consuming passion, made him uneasy. He wanted to manage my energy. He wanted to dilute my essence. That was unacceptable. My previous battles, the divorce from David, the familial expectations, the corporate ageism, had forged me into a woman who would not only recognize subtle control but also act upon it with swift, uncompromising precision. This was not about hatred. It was about self-preservation. It was about protecting the hard-won boundaries of my spirit. I would not dim my light for anyone, not even for a man I had come to cherish. This was a non-negotiable aspect of my authentic self. My plan began to form with a cold, almost surgical, precision. This wouldn't be a public confrontation or a dramatic outburst. This would be a meticulous, strategic reorientation of my entire existence. If Daniel wanted to subtly manage my passion, he was about to learn how precisely I could manage his entire place in my life. And I would do it by leveraging his own expertise. His investment advice. Daniel, a retired venture capitalist, had often spoken with considerable pride about his personal investment philosophy. He believed in diversification, in leveraging global trends, and, crucially, in identifying disruptive opportunities that generated exponential, rather than linear, returns. He frequently discussed his strategies for funding high-risk, high-reward ventures. He spoke of seed funding new frontiers and betting on visionary individuals. His advice, subtly dropped into our conversations, had always intrigued me. He often made light of his own success, implying that his wealth was simply a product of logical financial strategies, not emotional gambles. This was the blueprint. I would use his own logic, his own strategic advice, to fund my next, most intense, and utterly self-indulgent adventure. It would be my personal, disruptive opportunity. And he, unknowingly, would be the intellectual seed funder. My objective was radical. I wanted to embark on an adventure that transcended traditional travel. I wanted to join an underwater archaeology expedition, a multi-year project focused on discovering and preserving ancient shipwrecks in remote, unexplored regions of the world, the Mediterranean, the South Pacific, the sunken cities off the coast of Egypt. This wasn't a leisurely cruise or a guided tour. This was rigorous, demanding scientific exploration. It required physical stamina, intellectual discipline, and a profound commitment to the unknown. It was dangerous. It was utterly consuming. It was my wildest adventure. And it was gloriously, unapologetically, intense. This expedition was something I had quietly dreamed of since reading about underwater archaeology in college. But David would have dismissed it as impractical. My children would have fretted about safety. Sarah would have declared it not acting my age. But now, with my newfound freedom and my boundless resources, it was within reach. My energy was ready. My spirit was eager. I began my meticulous research in secret. I contacted archaeological societies, explored marine biology programs, looked for reputable nonprofit organizations that conducted such expeditions. My previous adventures, the motorcycle journeys, the Himalayan treks, the Italian culinary immersion, had given me a taste for challenging myself. This was the ultimate challenge. It required significant financial backing, far beyond what even Harper Creative's generous profits would cover on their own, or what my substantial personal wealth could immediately fund without careful planning. This would require leveraging his own investment principles. My first practical step was to organize my existing financial portfolio. Dr. Vivian Chong, my trusted financial advisor, was the first confidant in this new plan. I outlined my radical vision to her during a discreet meeting in her downtown Chicago office, her view of the city reflecting the expansive nature of my ambition. She, a woman who had seen me through divorcing David and building Harper Creative, understood my need for radical freedom. "Linda," she'd said, her voice filled with a quiet awe, "this is audacious and incredibly expensive. But with your current liquidity and the performance of your investments, it's absolutely feasible. We can strategically liquidate certain holdings, reallocate your existing capital, and perhaps leverage some specialized higher-yield funds, exactly the kind of instruments Daniel, ironically, used to manage to create a dedicated expedition fund. Your financial position is truly a testament to your quiet power." Her words resonated deeply. My financial independence, hard-won and fiercely guarded, was the bedrock of this wild freedom. My decades of meticulous financial management, scoffed at by David, dismissed by my brothers, had become the silent key to unlocking my profoundest desires. And the strategic deployment of Daniel's own investment advice would be the final, exquisite twist. He thought my passion was too intense. I was about to show him intensity on a global, oceanic scale. And he, unwittingly, would be my catalyst. Part 4. The strategic disengagement and the financial fulcrum. The months that followed Daniel's subtle pronouncement were a meticulously orchestrated ballet of strategic disengagement and quiet, relentless financial preparation. On the surface, my relationship with Daniel continued its gentle hum. We met for dinners, attended concerts, and enjoyed quiet walks along the lakefront. My participation in these activities was unflagging, but my spirit, unseen by Daniel, was now wholly absorbed in the intricate calculations of my wild, new future. I was present, yes, but profoundly, fundamentally detached. The serenity of my exterior belied the roaring torrent of my inner strategic machinations. Daniel, in his blissful unawareness, continued to offer his unsolicited advice on investment strategy. He spoke with charming expertise about market anomalies, undervalued assets, and the strategic advantages of early investment in niche, high-growth sectors. He outlined his own process of identifying disruptive technologies and visionary entrepreneurs for venture capital funding. He spoke of leveraging seed capital for exponential returns. Each casual piece of advice, each sophisticated financial insight he shared, was absorbed by me, analyzed, and integrated into the burgeoning blueprint for my underwater archaeology expedition. He was unwittingly providing the very theoretical framework for his own profound marginalization in my life. I held discreet, frequent meetings with Dr. Vivian Chong, my financial advisor. We meticulously reviewed my portfolio, identifying holdings that aligned perfectly with Daniel's disruptive investment philosophy: high-growth tech stocks, venture capital funds, ironically, some managed by Daniel's former firm, and even investments in niche scientific research ventures. We systematically began liquidating specific assets, reallocating capital, and rebalancing my entire portfolio to create a substantial, dedicated underwater expedition fund. The process was complex, requiring careful market timing and strategic tax planning, but Vivian was brilliant. My past life, once driven by David's demands, was now funding my boundless desires. This is exactly the kind of venture Daniel would have personally sought out and invested in, Vivian noted wryly one afternoon in her Chicago office as she reviewed the projected budget for a deep-sea research vessel charter. He probably doesn't know you're applying his exact strategy to your personal life. He wouldn't understand the returns, I replied, a knowing smile touching my lips. The returns I'm looking for aren't measured in dollars. My deepest investments now were in life itself, in experience, in adventure, in boundless joy. Meanwhile, my involvement in Echoes of the City, my interactive digital art installation, remained my public passion. I poured my creative energy into it, ensuring its success. The art project, slated for the Chicago Arts Festival, served as a brilliant smokescreen. My long hours in the studio, my intense focus, my frequent discussions about technology and creative breakthroughs, all perfectly explained my perceived intensity to Daniel. He attributed it to my artistic temperament, failing to realize it was merely a symptom of a deeper, far more strategic fervor. My art, ironically, provided perfect cover for my imminent grand escape. My contact with Daniel subtly began to lessen. I initiated fewer dinner dates. My replies to his messages grew slightly less immediate. When he called, his voice occasionally tinged with mild concern. "Linda, are you still overthinking that art project?" I would simply say, "It's a demanding process, Daniel. But it's profoundly rewarding." My responses were perfectly truthful, just deliberately incomplete. I was carefully disengaging, physically, emotionally, gradually creating distance, preparing for the ultimate detachment. He saw it as a temporary absorption in a demanding creative endeavor. He had no idea it was a permanent redirection of my life's compass. I also established a formal communication protocol with my children, Mark and Emily, and my key team members at Harper Creative. I would be off the grid for extended periods, reliant on satellite phones and occasional internet access. My business was now fully self-sufficient, run by my exceptional senior partners in Chicago and New York. My children, well into their own careers and family lives, understood my need for adventure, even if they sometimes found my radical independence bewildering. Their bonds with me, stripped of past expectations, were now stronger, purer. The time came to make contact with the lead archaeologist of the underwater expedition. Professor Elena Petrova, a renowned marine archaeologist from the University of Athens, led a private, grant-funded team working on ancient Roman shipwrecks in the Aegean Sea. Her expeditions were legendary, her dedication absolute. I wrote a carefully worded email outlining my extensive background in data analysis and my passion for marine history, emphasizing my ability to self-fund my participation for an extended period. I presented myself not as a passive patron, but as an active, committed team member. My experience from past corporate negotiations and personal vindications had honed my ability to present myself with undeniable value. Professor Petrova replied within days, intrigued. A video call was set. My excitement was boundless. Daniel, oblivious, sent me a text moments before the call. "Enjoying the symphony tonight, darling. Maybe you should take a break from that project. Too intense." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. His dismissal was my permission. His judgment my propulsion. The time had come for me to fund my own, utterly intense reality. And I was about to use his own investment advice to do it. Part 5. The masterstroke of personal investment. The video call with Professor Elena Petrova was the definitive turning point. It was a sun-drenched afternoon in my Chicago loft, while the Aegean Sea shimmered 1,000 miles away on my screen. Professor Petrova was exactly as I had imagined, a woman in her late 60s, weathered by sun and sea, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Her passion for underwater archaeology radiated through the screen. I presented my case not as a wealthy donor seeking a hobby, but as a dedicated, capable, and profoundly committed individual seeking an intellectual and physical challenge. I spoke of my experience in data analysis, my rigorous personal fitness regimen, which now included advanced freediving and underwater navigation training I'd undertaken in secret, and my passion for history. Crucially, I detailed my financial capability to self-fund my entire multi-year participation, covering all my own expenses, equipment, and even contributing a substantial amount towards the expedition's research budget. I emphasized my autonomy, my lack of external demands, and my ability to be utterly reliable for extended periods in remote locations. "Professor," I concluded, my voice clear and unwavering, "my previous life allowed me to build resources. My next chapter is about applying those resources not to acquisition, but to discovery. Not to accumulation, but to profound, transformative experience. I believe I can be a genuinely valuable member of your team." Professor Petrova listened intently, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she smiled, a slow, genuine smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Linda," she said, her voice gravelly but warm, "you are indeed a unique applicant. We rarely find passion so thoroughly matched with competence. Your offer to fully self-fund for a multi-year expedition, that is, shall we say, a game changer, especially for our research grants." She paused, then looked directly into the camera. "We operate under extremely challenging conditions, Linda. It is physically grueling. It is intellectually demanding. It is often incredibly frustrating. There is no luxury, no easy resort. It will be truly intense. Is that clear?" "Perfectly clear, Professor," I replied, a genuine smile touching my lips. Intensity, I have learned, is precisely where true transformation lies. Her decision was swift. "Welcome aboard, Linda. The Aegean expedition begins in 3 months. I will send you the detailed preparatory protocols and equipment lists. Be ready." My heart soared. This was it. The ultimate adventure. The embodiment of my unapologetically intense spirit. The liquidation of Daniel's remaining presence in my life was as meticulously planned as my expedition. I drafted a concise, polite email informing him that my increasingly demanding creative projects were taking me out of Chicago for an extended, undefined period, and that I was unable to maintain our current level of engagement. There was no bitterness, no accusation. Just a statement of undeniable, personal fact. "Dear Daniel, It began as my commitment to new, highly immersive projects expands globally. I've realized I will be out of Chicago for an extended, unpredictable period, making it impossible to maintain the regular rhythms of our companionship. Therefore, I believe it's best if we conclude our relationship at this time. I wish you all the best in your continued pursuits. Sincerely, Linda. I hit send. Then, I systematically removed him from my immediate digital life, unfollowing on social media, unsubscribing from joint newsletters, deleting his contact information. No fanfare, just a quiet, absolute detachment. My act of disengagement was total, definitive, and profoundly liberating. My actual last communication with Daniel, however, happened hours later. His former business partner, Michael Davies, a man I knew socially and a frequent attendee at David's former networking dinners, sent me a very confused, curious text. Linda, Michael Davies here. Just heard a truly intriguing rumor about you. Daniel Hayes, my old partner, is apparently beside himself. He said you just ended things, and that you're going off the grid for some intense art project. He says your last text was rather vague. Is that true? Just wondering how you managed to pull that off. His direct investment in that company you mentioned was substantial. I smiled. The threads were coming together. Art project. Too intense. Going off the grid. Daniel, my investment advice provider, had inadvertently, or perhaps conveniently in his pride, interpreted my complex multi-year underwater archaeological expedition as a flamboyant art installation funded by his specific past investment, his investment advice into my new expedition fund. The irony was exquisite. He believed I was using his intellectual property to perform for a local Chicago art festival, completely unaware that I was leveraging his actual investment principles for a literal global deep dive. My quiet genius had created a brilliant misdirection, an utterly spectacular camouflage for my wild escape. And the masterstroke of using his own money, so to speak, in his very particular investment philosophy, to fund my wildest adventure, felt like the ultimate, private, victory. Part 6. The Dive into the Unseen. My departure from Chicago for the Aegean Sea was swift, quiet, and utterly exhilarating. My townhouse, now professionally managed by a local firm for passive income, exuded a tranquil readiness, awaiting my return whenever that might be. My team at Harper Creative, fully briefed on my multi-year absence and thrilled by my audacity, was now fully self-sufficient under the leadership of my senior partners, ensuring the firm's continued growth. I entrusted Emily with Clara, my granddaughter, and a heartfelt promise of postcards from ancient lands and a vague timeline of my return. Mark, my son, ever the pragmatic, seemed to find a profound professional respect in my meticulous detachment. I met the expedition team in Athens. Professor Elena Petrova was a formidable presence, her expertise radiating quiet authority. The research vessel, the Kore, was not luxurious. It was a working ship, a floating laboratory filled with sophisticated sonar equipment, remote-operated vehicles, ROVs, and an air of intense academic rigor. My cabin was small, functional. My new uniform was a wetsuit. This was precisely the kind of challenging, unbounded, unscripted reality I had craved. This was my kind of intensity. My days unfolded in a demanding, yet deeply fulfilling rhythm. Early mornings involved complex dive briefings, poring over ancient maps and sonar readings. Hours were spent underwater, carefully documenting submerged ruins, meticulously recovering artifacts, operating sophisticated underwater photography equipment. My mind, sharp and analytical, thrived on the intellectual puzzle of piecing together fragments of history from the seabed. My body, conditioned by years of self-care and recent training, found new reserves of strength, adapting to the immense physical demands of deep-sea diving in challenging currents. I discovered a profound, almost spiritual connection to the ancient past, feeling the weight of millennia of human endeavor beneath the waves. My diet consisted of simple, nourishing meals prepared on the ship. My social circle narrowed to the passionate, fiercely intelligent diverse, marine biologists, and archaeologists who shared this extraordinary, singular focus. Conversations revolved around ancient trade routes, pottery shards, the behavior of underwater currents, and the precise techniques for preserving fragile artifacts. There was no room for superficialities, no tolerance for small talk or unspoken expectations. My previous life, with its polite condescensions and subtle demands, felt impossibly distant, irrelevant. I checked my phone only rarely during sporadic satellite internet access windows. Daniel's subtle attempts to re-establish contact, hesitant emails, polite inquiries through mutual acquaintances, were easily shrugged off. The news of his continued bewilderment, filtered through curious friends who seemed equally mystified by my utter disappearance from their predictable orbit, was a quiet, constant hum of validation. "Daniel is telling everyone you just went off the deep end, Linda," Carol once texted. "He says it's your intense artistic temperament." I smiled. He was still trying to fit my boundless freedom into his tiny, manageable box. He had no idea I was thousands of feet beneath the waves, breathing history. The greatest triumph, however, was internal. The complete immersion in a demanding, dangerous, utterly absorbing pursuit left no room for lingering self-doubt. The physical rigor, the mental challenge, the constant dance with the unknown, it was a profound act of meditation, burning away any last vestiges of worry, of societal expectation, of self-consciousness. My energy, my creativity, my very essence were now directed purely outwards, into the vast, compelling mystery of the deep sea. My passion was not just intense, it was boundless, expansive, utterly sovereign. This was my true investment. This was my absolute joy. And I was living it gloriously, defiantly, on my own terms, under thousands of miles of deep, boundless water. Part 7. The Unearthing of Buried Truths. My life on the research vessel Kore was a continuous masterclass in physical endurance and intellectual discovery. Months blurred into seasons, marked not by holiday calendars or social engagements, but by dive schedules, underwater weather conditions, and the exhilarating triumph of unearthing ancient truths from the seabed. My physical strength soared. I carried heavy equipment, navigated treacherous currents, and performed intricate archaeological tasks with a precision that belied my years. My mind, sharp and agile, absorbed vast amounts of new knowledge, from marine biology to classical history. My existence was utterly defined by purpose, by connection to something larger than myself, the silent whispers of civilizations long lost to the waves. Professor Elena Petrova, initially intrigued by my unique application and self-funding, grew to genuinely respect my intellectual rigor and my unshakable dedication. She saw my drive not as a charming eccentricity, but as the raw, unadulterated passion of a true scholar. We spent hours discussing archaeological theories, debating the provenance of pottery shards, and mapping the intricate histories of sunken trade routes. Her trust in me was profound, earned not through social graces, but through shared hard work in the face of immense pressure and the exhilarating moments of shared discovery. My connection to the outside world remained deliberately minimal. I would occasionally receive emails forwarded by Vivian Chong, my financial advisor, offering updates on my flourishing investments. I'd chuckle quietly at Daniel's continued bewilderment, conveyed through occasional, almost comically frustrated inquiries from acquaintances. "Daniel is still convinced you're working on some kind of bizarre, secret art project underground," my friend Carol once texted. "He's very worried about your mental health." My art project, of course, was an entire sunken Roman city. His investment advice, a quiet contribution to its unearthing. The irony was exquisite. My physical separation from him was merely a reflection of a deeper, spiritual chasm that had long ago opened. My communications with Mark and Emily were more consistent. I would send them emails with photos of stunning underwater discoveries, sharing glimpses of my new, exhilarating reality. They responded with a mix of awe and bewildered admiration. Emily, fascinated by the intersection of ancient history and cutting-edge technology, often asked for more details about my ROV usage and digital mapping. Mark, ever the pragmatic, found a surprising professional respect in my logistical precision. They saw me thriving, utterly beyond the reach of any expectations they or Daniel might harbor. My profound distance, ironically, brought us closer in ways we never were before. My body, once a source of subtle concern and even mild embarrassment, thanks to David's judgment, was now a vessel of pure strength and boundless energy. The last vestiges of menopausal discomfort were long gone, replaced by the profound satisfaction of physical capability and an unyielding connection to the raw elements of nature. I felt stronger, healthier, more attuned to my own needs than I had been at any point in my life. The perceived intensity Daniel had critiqued was not a flaw. It was the very fuel that allowed me to live a life utterly unbound by conventional limits. This deep, oceanic immersion, both literally and figuratively, unearthed more than just artifacts. It brought to light the raw, untamed truth of my utterly resilient spirit. I had learned, firsthand, that true vitality was found in living a life that defied every expectation, especially your own. And this exploration of my own true depths was the greatest discovery of all. Part 8. The Surface of Reconnection and the Profound Shift. After 2 extraordinary years, the Aegean Sea expedition drew to a planned close. The work was monumental, yielding incredible discoveries that reshaped our understanding of ancient Roman maritime trade routes. My contributions were recognized as invaluable, both for my physical stamina in the field and my intellectual rigor in data analysis. I returned to Chicago not exhausted, but profoundly energized, my spirit overflowing with an unshakable sense of purpose and a palpable connection to a history spanning millennia. The silence of the deep sea had imprinted a new level of calm onto my being. My re-entry into city life was seamless. My Ukrainian village townhouse welcomed me home with its familiar warmth and my flourishing garden. Harper Creative, under the exceptional leadership of my senior partners, had continued to grow exponentially in my absence, reaching new heights of success. My life in Chicago felt expansive, infused with the wisdom and broadened perspective gleaned from 2 years spent underwater, far from the demands of land-based expectation. My children, Mark and Emily, were overjoyed by my return. They had watched my journey unfold through satellite texts and sporadic photos, filled with a mix of awe and pride. Mark, now a successful venture capitalist, seemed genuinely humbled by my radical detachment. He sought my advice on strategic exits and purposeful living, understanding that true wealth was measured not just in assets, but in experiences. Emily, too, saw my return as a profound inspiration, recognizing the depths of courage it took to truly live a life unbound. My granddaughter, Clara, now a curious and articulate young girl, was utterly fascinated by my stories of shipwrecks and ancient artifacts, looking at me with wide, admiring eyes. The silence that had once defined my relationships, the kind that allowed others to underestimate me, was now a deliberate choice. I spoke when I chose, sharing my experiences with those who truly sought to understand. My authenticity, hardened by my radical choices, attracted people who truly resonated with my boundless spirit. Then, inevitably, came the calls from my old social circle. Daniel, my ex-boyfriend, had heard whispers of my return. He called first. His voice, usually smooth and composed, was surprisingly hesitant, almost tentative. "Linda? Is that truly you? I heard you're back in Chicago. My God, you just disappeared. How are you doing?" I was so worried. He still assumed his worry was relevant. "I'm very well, Daniel," I replied, my voice calm, warm, but with a subtle note of clear detachment. "More than well. My expedition was a monumental success, and my health has never been better." "Expedition," he repeated, a flicker of confusion in his tone.
"Oh,
"The art project."
so you're done with that?"
"The performance? Is it coming to a gallery here?" He still clung to his art project narrative, unable to grasp the true scale of my undertaking. "My art project, Daniel, I said, a faint, knowing smile touching my lips, involved uncovering ancient Roman shipwrecks and unearthing millennia of history. It was a scientific and archaeological endeavor. The performance was merely in defying your expectations of what a woman my age should be doing with her time. I paused. And the investment you unknowingly helped facilitate, via your excellent investment advice, generated profound returns beyond your wildest financial projections. It funded my wildest adventure.
So, yes.
It was profoundly successful. A long, profound silence stretched between us. He was utterly speechless. He tried to speak, stammered a few times, but no coherent words emerged. The full weight of his past condescension, his casual dismissal of my passion as too intense, his belief that I would simply fall into line with his comfortable expectations, all of it now crushed under the immense, undeniable reality of my radical transformation. His advice, intended to manage me, had utterly unbound me. His investment advice, meant to channel my resources into sensible returns, had just funded my wildest dreams. The irony was exquisite, and the silence on his end was the sound of a universe shifting on its axis. I trust you're well, Daniel, I said, my voice gentle, but with absolute finality. I wish you continued peace. I hung up. This was not about hatred. This was about completion. My quiet return to Chicago wasn't a retreat. It was an absolute assertion of unshakable freedom. My life, unbounded, unscripted, utterly and gloriously mine, now vibrated with the silent joy of knowing that I was the sole architect of my own extraordinary destiny. The ultimate act of self-sovereignty. Part 9. The boundless horizon of true self. I stood on the deck of my sailboat, cutting through the crisp, clean waters of Lake Michigan. The Chicago skyline shimmered in the distance, a testament to ambition and human ingenuity. I was 72 now, my body strong, my mind sharp, my spirit utterly unbound. My adventures continued, now balanced with moments of profound connection to my city, my garden, and the family I cherished. The echoes of past battles, with David, with my children's expectations, with dismissive bosses, even with well-meaning friends, had faded into distant memories, now simply markers on a journey that had led me to this profound sense of self. My passion for underwater archaeology continued, albeit on a less intensive scale. I joined local historical societies, advising on submerged cultural heritage projects in the Great Lakes, sharing my expertise, my knowledge, my boundless enthusiasm. My unique blend of creative vision, strategic acumen, and adventurous spirit had garnered a new level of respect, not just from my existing professional network, but from a broader community eager for wisdom that transcended traditional boundaries. My journey had begun with a seemingly innocuous, yet deeply cutting, piece of advice from Daniel: "Your passion is too intense." Those 3 words, intended to rein me in, to nudge me towards a more conventional path for a woman of my age, had instead ignited a fire of radical self-reclamation. They forced me to confront the unspoken societal scripts, the subtle expectations that even a loving partner could impose. I had rejected that script, fiercely and unapologetically. I had meticulously chosen my next adventure, funded not just by my independent wealth, but by strategically leveraging Daniel's very own investment advice. I had embarked on an unthinkable journey for a woman of my age, yet a profoundly symbolic one, a deep dive into the mysteries of ancient history, thousands of feet beneath the waves. It was the antithesis of everything that constrained me, the literal vehicle for my escape into a life unburdened by external definitions of balance or moderation. This grand odyssey, sparked by a subtle attempt to manage my joy, had become my ultimate act of self-discovery. Menopause, far from being a decline, had been the crucible that forged this profound clarity, burning away the last vestiges of fear, the need for external validation, the quiet compliance that had defined my early life. It stripped away the expectation that my joy must fit neatly into someone else's box. It made me realize that my strength was not in fitting in, but in defiantly standing out, even in the deepest, darkest corners of the ocean. My intensity, once perceived as a flaw, was now recognized as the boundless energy of a soul living truly, magnificently free. My power, I realized, lay not in what I did, but in how profoundly I chose to live. It was in the fierce joy of exploring ancient shipwrecks, the grounding simplicity of tending my garden, the invigorating challenge of new creative projects. It was in my unwavering commitment to authenticity, even when it made others uncomfortable or even bewildered. My aging, far from being a period of withdrawal, had become a radical unveiling, a rewilding of my spirit, a defiant assertion that the most vibrant chapters of a woman's life often begin when others least expect it. My liberation was not a destination. It was the open sea itself, stretching endlessly before me. Part 10. The Unseen Depths of Unbound Joy. I am now 75. My life in Chicago is a testament to the unbound spirit, a vibrant symphony of purpose and unshakable joy. Harper Creative continues to flourish, a beacon of purpose-driven design, attracting talent and clients who value integrity and authentic innovation above all else. My garden bursts with life. My home reflects the dynamic peace I embody, and my presence in my children's and grandchildren's lives is a source of cherished, boundless love, freely given and reciprocated. My relationship with Daniel Hayes is simply non-existent. He is a ghost of a past misunderstanding, a subtle echo of the kind of well-meaning but ultimately controlling presence I am now utterly immune to. His lingering narrative of my too intense passion or my inability to balance simply holds no power over my profoundly vibrant reality. He continues to navigate his quiet, comfortable retirement, utterly unaware of the boundless depths of adventure and fulfillment I discovered by embracing the very intensity he feared. My children, Mark and Emily, now lean on me not for guidance on what they should do, but for inspiration on how to simply be. They are building their own beautiful, complicated lives, and they see my unwavering authenticity as their truest legacy. My granddaughter, Clara, now a curious and independent teenager, looks at me with wide, admiring eyes. She sees her grandmother, not as a fading matriarch, but as a woman who truly embodies boundless possibility, a living testament to joyful defiance and limitless exploration. This, I realized, is my most profound legacy, not money, not titles, but the living example of unscripted joy and radical self-sovereignty. The path of my life, once so neatly defined by societal expectations and subtle familial pressures, is now boundless. I am no longer just Linda Harper, the one who shed a marriage or sold a company. I am Linda Harper, the woman who embraced her age as an invitation to radical self-discovery. This silent change was not a diminishment. It was an expansion. It was the quiet, roaring liberation of a spirit finally unleashed, plunging into the unseen depths of boundless joy. And the life ahead, for me, stretches infinitely, filled with adventure, purpose, and the exhilarating hum of a life lived exactly on my own terms, utterly unbound, forever free. Linda turns to address the camera directly. She is in a sleek, modern, yet warmly inviting living room. Behind her, a large, dramatic photograph of an underwater scene, perhaps a shipwreck or an ancient artifact, symbolizing her profound adventures, hangs on the wall. She radiates quiet confidence and undeniable power, a subtle, serene smile on her face. Have you ever had someone you care about, a partner, a friend, or even family, subtly try to dim your light, telling you your passion is too intense, or your dreams are too much? Did you feel that subtle judgment trying to put you back in a box, defined by their comfort or expectations? Tell me your story in the comments below. Let's talk about how we reclaim our boundless joy, defy those who try to constrain us, and truly lean into our authentic intensity. Your story of embracing your wildest dreams might be the exact inspiration someone else needs to finally plunge into their own unbound life. And if you're ready to dive into your own extraordinary second act, If you're ready to prove that your intensity is your greatest superpower, make sure you subscribe to The Silent Change After 50. We are building a powerful community where women over 50 are breaking free, defining their own narratives, and discovering the profound depths of their limitless joy. Join us.